stampingdough.com, and today I'm going to show you a quick and easy card that you can do with a bit of watercoloring using the Happy Birthday to You stamp set that you can get free through our celebration sale. So for a minimum $60 order, you can get this stamp set for free. I'm also going to be using the coordinating dies that Stampin' Up just came out with, the birthday dies. And with this, you actually have the die for the whole cake. You have a couple of choices of leaves, the actual pedestal, and then you have this piece here that actually just cuts out those flowers here. So it makes using your stamp set go a lot further, and that is what I decided to do today, is use this piece here. So let me show you. I've already started the basics of the card. So the background is our rich raspberry cardstock, cut to 5.5 by 8.5 and then scored at 4 1/4. For the card front, I used our Granny Apple Green cardstock. So this one is just cut to 4 by 5 1/4. So for the squares, I actually just did a combination of the stripes and the little hexagons, I think they're called, or honeycombs, whatever you want to call them. And I cut them to just about 1.5, just a little under, okay? And added the 3 here, 3 here. I just used snail to adhere them together. For the actual flowers, I used the stamp that comes all together like this with our Stays On ink. And this is our watercolor paper, which comes in 6 by 9 sheets, and it's really nice and thick and beautiful to watercolor on. So for my Stays On, I'm just making sure that it's nice and inky everywhere. If you find that you're not getting a crisp black, just make sure that you have that re-inker and you re-ink it. Now you're going to see that I'm using our paper piercing mat as a background here. It does help when you have bigger stamps to have this little bit of a cushioning underneath it to get a nicer impression. For the coloring, I actually used the Granny Apple Green and then our rich raspberry ink. Now you can do this on the inside of the lid if you want. Generally, if you press that into the bottom, you'll get ink color in here. But I find it easier to just take one of my clear blocks and just add some color on it so that you can use that for your watercoloring. So I just did that with both my colors. And then I'm going to use my Aquapainter. Okay, with the Aquapainter, you don't want too much water. You'll see there's water in my barrel. So I do want a bit of water on my block though, so just squeeze it. And you can see I just kind of have a little pool of water there. And I can use that to kind of take a little bit of the water and just bring out some of that color. Because at the beginning, I just really want like a really light wash to color in all of those leaves. Once the first layer of my green is done, you can just take it off. I just use my fingers, but you can use like a paper towel or something to take that color off. And then we're just gonna go and with our rich raspberry. So again, I just want a little bit of water on my block in the corner so that I can start to pull some of that color out and it's not too dark. And for this, just gonna do the whole flower. And then I'm gonna go back and add some accent colors after. A lot of people using the stamp set have done heat embossing for the flower, and it looks really pretty too, but I just wanted to more show the watercoloring technique today. And so I just decided to use that black Stays On since it is waterproof. So once I'm done that wash on the flower, I'm actually going to go back in with a little bit of darker color just to do these little tiny flower buds. Since I know I want those dark anyways, and there's such a small surface that really doesn't really matter. If I do my water wash first, it's kind of nice just to have it one color. All right, now that this is a little bit more dry, I'm just gonna go back in. We'll start with the green, add a tiny little bit of water to my tip, and then I want a little bit darker color, so I'm just kind of mixing that in with a little bit more color. And I'm gonna go back in and just add some accents. And the good thing with this stamp set is actually has those little black lines, which kind of give you a little bit of a hint as to where to add some darker color. I am definitely not a professional artist when it comes to coloring. I just kind of add some colors here and there, and it turns out the way that I like anyhow. There's no right and wrong. You can just kind of play around. So I'm happy with how that turned out. I'm gonna go back in now and add a little bit of accent color into my flower. And again, I want a little bit more color on my aqua painter, but still with water on there. So making sure that that tip is nice and pointy. And I can just go back in and just add some color into the middle. Now, because the amount of water and the amount of color that I pick up on my brush is different every time, I find that all of my images do look a lot different. So for this one here, it's still quite wet, so I'm gonna set it aside and just let it dry before I go on to the next step. The other thing that you can do is you can actually use your heat tool just to heat set that dry. To make this go a little quicker, I decided to go and heat set that with my heat tool. So now I'm going to pull in my die cutting machine and the actual die that goes with it. So you can see that on my dies, I actually put a little bit of washi tape, so I can do that after or before if I'm reusing it. But I find that using the washi tape, it just makes it stay a lot better. So I'm just going to line that up as best as I can to make it kind of centered in there. And we could just use the washi tape to keep it into place. All right, so once I have that done, I'm just going to take my plate, and I probably have that the wrong way for the camera, but anyhow, yeah. All right, let's turn it like it should be. There we go. Sorry about all the wiggles there. My table is jiggly. I'm gonna move that aside. And you can see it cuts out those flowers really nicely. So look at that. It gives you that 3D layer that you can use on your card, which is really nice. If you know my stamping, you know that I love to use dimensionals on a card. It just makes it just look a little bit less, you know, flat. And I really like the look. So now we're just gonna adhere all this together. So for the main card, I'm just gonna use snail. And I'm gonna center that. And then I've already stamped my greeting in Rich Razzleberry. And then I actually just used my paper snips to cut that out. So I found, originally I had it in a rectangle and I just found it a little too overwhelming for the card. So I decided to do it this way instead. Now, the flowers we can put either on this side or on this side. I kind of liked it both ways, but I think I'm going to do it this way. And we're going to use some dimensionals. Now, just as a reminder, our dimensionals come in 2 different sizes. So you can see this is our regular dimensionals, the regular size. And then we also have the minis over here. So I'm going to use the regular ones because this is a bigger area anyways. Okay, once you have all of those on, if you just poke your nail into the middle, the actual sides of the dimensional come up and it's easier to take that cover off. Move that aside. Let's see. I think about there is good. Look at how much nicer it's starting to look. Now for the greeting, I'm going to do the same but I'm going to use some of these little ones just to go into the smaller spaces. And I'm going to put my greeting, kind of offset it a little bit to the left. Now the other thing that I had shown you from the dies is that it has these cute little leaves. So you can see I used this one here, and I actually cut them out a couple of times so that I had 4 of them, and I decided I just liked having the 2, so we're going to attach those about there. And I'm just going to use snail for this. You just have to be careful when you're doing this with snail, just because the surface is really, really small. You can see the stem is just tiny. And then it starts to glue to you. But we're just going to tuck that underneath. Just put it on there. And we're going to do the same with the second one. Now be careful if you continue to use the same paper. This is our grid paper, that the leftover snail on here doesn't get caught up on one of your other cards. I've had that happen and ripped some cards before. All right, here you go. Just gonna add that about there. And there you go. You can see the 3D of that. I actually think that's really pretty. Just a really simple card with some simple watercoloring. I don't like to fussy a lot when I do coloring. I like coloring a little bit, but sometimes it's just so nice to have on a card. So there you go. Just a reminder that our celebration sale is still going on. On March 4th, we will have actually some more celebration products coming out, which is going to be super cool. I've already seen them, and I will be sharing those with you shortly. So have a great day, and if you have any questions at all, just let me know. Bye!